Yo, is the mic on, Mike? Into that mic on, Mike, and pour us another one. Let's do it right though, Mike. We feeling nice though, Mike. Gather round, gather round. Into that mic on, Mike. Into that mic on, Mike. Yeah, Garage Drinks with Mike. Woo!
You goodness.
I'm good.
Naz Mohammed, welcome to the garage.
Thank you. It's good to be here. Thank you for having me.
It's really good to have you. I really wanted to try this red that I got you.
Yes.
Haven't tried it before. You're into New Zealand reds, eh?
I try to support local as much as possible. I do like international wines and Australian wines and South African wines, but I explore a lot of New Zealand reds, and we've got some really good ones here. So
we
why
do.
not?
Because you asked me for Villa Maria's.
Yeah.
Okay, so I got one that's real similar.
I know it's not the Villa
This is
Maria,
Esk
but
Valley.
it's really good. Yeah.
Hawke's
yeah.
Bay, yeah. They make
Yeah.
some really good reds over there.
Yeah.
Do you prefer New Zealand sort of cab sauv? I know they're a bit lighter than Australian cab sauv.
I've actually historically been a Pinot Noir drinker. Yeah. But I do like a more full-bodied Pinot Noir, and the more full-bodied ones are the more expensive ones.
Of course, Central Otago.
And I find that a Shiraz and a Cab Sav actually have that full body and sort of similar notes that I quite enjoy. So you can get away with getting a reasonably priced Cab Sav or a Shiraz rather than having to go high-end Pinot Noir.
That's true.
Yeah, and New Zealand's got amazing wines. Like I do
Sure
try a lot. I actually go to Pinot Palooza. We haven't had it last year due to COVID, but they put on a wine festival
Where's this?
in the city at Shed 10.
Pinot Palooza.
Pinot Palooza.
Is it just Pinot Noir or is it Pinot Noir, Pinot Gris?
It's they showcase all New Zealand wines. It's called Pinot Palooza, but it's actually all New Zealand wines being showcased, and wineries from around the country, small ones, big ones, all come in there with their wines. You can go do some wine tasting. Have discovered some amazing red wines, like from just having gone there, and really small wineries in the South Island. There's one called Nanny Goat, which is just beautiful Pinot Noir. Like, if people haven't tried it, you have to.
Nanny Goat, where's that?
Nanny Goat. It's in... I want to say Central Otago, but I might be wrong.
Nanny Goat.
Nanny Goat.
So like a boutique winery.
Yeah.
Some of those smaller ones, because they produce smaller wines. They haven't got
right.
enough to
beautiful.
sell on the massive market. But they make some pretty good ones.
Yeah, and so I like trying new wines. I try new things, and then you sort of develop a taste for something and kind of gravitate towards it. But yeah.
With your Villa Maria, I was going to ask you, like, which one is it that you normally go for? Is it the cellar selection or the private bin?
I go for the cellar selection.
Ooh.
Usually. But I'll tell you a story about how actually I came
Got
to
that
really
expensive taste, girl.
I came to enjoy the Cab Sav that I told you about when we were in lockdown last year.
It's a blend, am I right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a Merlot Cabernet blend. Yeah.
It is. I have a local, bottle store that I go to, and they know me really well. Gosh, should I be admitting that? But they know me really well.
It's fine.
And of course, what do you do? Like, most people were just drinking during lockdown.
Yeah.
So I thought, I probably shouldn't be getting all my alcohol here, because these guys are going to think that I'm drinking too much.
Right.
So I started going to the local Foursquare, and of course they stock all of the same wines in that they have at New World and Pack and Save. And they had a full shelf of the Villa Maria Cab Sav. And so I got a couple of bottles, and I did go back every few days to get more of it. I probably bought out more than half of that shelf in the end. But yeah, really enjoyed it.
Well, once you find like a really good red or a really good wine that you like, then I think
you gravitate towards it.
Yeah.
You do.
It's not a bad thing though. I think it's a really good thing for Villa Maria.
Yeah.
Because they got so much competition, man. They got so much wines they're out there competing with.
Yeah.
I think it's really good that you really like their wine.
Yeah.
Villa Maria don't just do that Villa Maria label as well. They do a whole lot of different labels.
I'm not too sure about that.
No, they do.
They do.
Yeah. They do other ones that are under different labels. When I used to work for the Wine Society, I used to remember all of this.
Of course you work for the
Yeah,
Wine
but I
Society.
can't remember what the other labels are. But they do a variety of different labels that are still actually under the Villa Maria winery.
Yeah. Like South African wines are really good. South Africa is known for good wines, especially their Rieslings, and white wines are really, really good. So
I didn't know this.
Yeah, you should try some. There's a rosé that I'm particularly partial to, which is called the Nederburg Rosé from South Africa, which is really nice.
Countdown.
Yes, they do. They haven't always, but when they started stocking it at Countdown, I was like, oh gosh, this is so amazing. So every so often I will pick up a bottle because it's a bit nostalgic, but I don't feel that I need to because we actually have amazing wines in New Zealand.
There's a bubbly that comes from South Africa that's called, I think it's Promengratz. Might be saying it wrong. I like their rosé version.
I'm not into bubbles a lot. Like I don't even drink champagne hardly ever.
Sure.
Just not my thing. I don't enjoy fizz with alcohol.
Yeah.
I do sort of have a lemon soda with whiskey. I quite enjoy whiskey, and recently started drinking the lemon soda with whiskey.
Yes.
So good.
So
good. Yeah.
Damn, we could talk about this all day.
Actually, let's just make this whole podcast about alcohol.
We could talk about this all day.
Yeah, this I can do because, of course, you wouldn't tell me what we were going to be talking about, but this I can do.
No, but that's great. Like, see, everything you're talking about is everything I want to know from you.
Yeah.
There's more.
Okay. Damn.
So you are my first guest of South African descent, which is why we have the South African flag.
Yeah.
However, like you wanted both the flags. You didn't want both the flags, but you said that you would run both the flags behind you. Talk to me about that. So, okay.
And then you asked if I had
to make this a
one.
bit easier, why don't you tell everybody where you're from and where you grew up?
Okay. Can I just start by making a confession about something?
Confess away.
I've had to teach myself this week to say garage. Like I have to keep repeating saying garage.
How would you normally say?
I say garage.
American.
I say garage. I don't know if it's American, but it's
American.
just,
Garage.
it's just what we've always said. And even living in New Zealand for 14 years, I know New Zealanders say garage, but it's just not natural for me. So it's just never developed, and I always still say garage. And so this week I was like, you got to say garage. But I'm going to say garage.
Say garage.
Sorry,
It's the same place. It's the same place.
The same place, but I say garage, and I don't know that I can stick to saying garage, even though I've tried to teach myself it. But so yes, South African born.
South African born.
And to parents who were South African born, I was fourth generation South African born Indian.
Right. Wow.
So my ancestry is actually Indian. My nationality is South African. My ethnicity is Indian, and I'm a resident of New Zealand. So yes.
So you grew up in South Africa?
Yes, I was 24 when I moved from South Africa to New Zealand, and had lived in South Africa for the whole time before that. Yeah.
Whereabouts in South Africa you grew up?
From Durban, which is coastal, beautiful, beautiful part of the world. And I grew up in a predominantly Indian suburb or community. So, of course, having come from apartheid, people were segregated according to their races.
Right.
So growing up, you lived in an Indian community, because that's where all the Indians were located during apartheid. And it's still predominantly Indian. Because people haven't, just because they were given the freedom to live where they wanted to, they haven't necessarily just left their homes and gone to a new place. But
has that segregation changed much?
So apartheid has been abolished, but the segregation hasn't really changed. People who've prospered are now able to afford homes in better areas that they wouldn't have been allowed to live in during apartheid. But for the most part, people have still stuck to where their communities are based, where their families are based, where they've grown up. It's familiar, it's affordable. And we tend to gravitate towards sticking to people who look like us, and within our own communities, which is it's very similar to the way people live here as well. You tend to have different demographics sort of congregating or settling in similar areas, but with us it was prescribed. We were forced to live in a certain place, and you couldn't actually live where you wanted to. Even
is that right?
Oh yeah, well that's what apartheid was. The definition of the word apartheid is separation. It's the Afrikaans word for separation. And so people could only live where they were told they could live. And so growing up, I was born into an apartheid regime. I was in my just pre-teens when it was abolished, when Nelson Mandela was freed from prison and South Africa was...
So what was it like being born into it, like on a day-to-day basis? Like, how different is that from like your kids growing up at the moment? You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I'm very fortunate to have had a family who sheltered me from that. Growing up, I had no idea that I wasn't living the kind of life that I should have, because where I lived was where I lived, and you know, the people around me were familiar. I didn't realize there was a whole world out there that was going on, that there were different types of people who lived in other areas. I wasn't exposed to white people because they didn't live in my community. I didn't go to school with them.
No white people around you?
Hardly ever, unless we went into the city. Like, if we went into the city, yes, I saw white people. I never thought to question how come they didn't live in my area. You know, you're so little, you don't think about it. But what I had, I enjoyed. What we had was bountiful. It was family. It was a sense of belonging. It was security. I felt safe. I felt loved. My parents never told me that I was different to other people or that I was less than other people. There was never something that was communicated to me. So I grew up during those years not actually knowing that I was treated any differently, or that I should think of myself as being different, or the color of my skin mattered. Had no idea.
I guess because like if you're fourth generation into it as well, your parents, their parents are just so used to it that it just becomes something that you're used to, and so you're used to having children into the system.
Yeah.
So what was it like when that was abolished and changed? Like, how did that affect your family?
Yeah, wow. I was about 12 years old, I think, and went to an Indian school, you know, so everybody at school looked like I did. We had moved from where we'd initially lived into a similar type of community and similar suburb. And there was all this talk about, you know, apartheid being abolished. Of course, I knew at that point that we lived in an apartheid society. And there was talk about, you know, Nelson Mandela. I had no idea who he was, what he stood for. So we were learning about it at school. And we were putting on Can
I just ask you a real dumb question before you carry on?
Yeah.
Apartheid means separate. Does that mean that, like, did they just separate white people from colored people? Or did they separate, like, Indians from African black from African white? Like, is that a stupid question?
No, it's not a stupid question. But everybody had their place and everybody had to be in their place. So coloreds were separated in their own locale, and Indians had their own, and blacks had their own.
So
and there was a hierarchy. So obviously whites being superior. And then it was sort of coloreds and Indians, you know, almost on par, and blacks just were regarded as, you know, the lowest of the racial hierarchy, and so they were given the worst accommodation. They lived in the worst areas. Coloured people were generally next to the Indian location, so I was exposed to coloured people growing up. And yes, coloured is a race.
Yeah. So
in South Africa, it's a racial definition for a group, a demographic group. Like, so coloured people are people of mixed race. So it's like, you know, white and black mixed, or
half caste.
You're a coloured person in South Africa. That's literally, coloured is a race in South Africa. And sometimes, like, you know, initially it would be something that I would say in regards to, you know, somebody, and people would be like, you can't call someone coloured. It's like, but that's what they are. And I realized actually that's quite derogatory to refer to somebody as coloured, because in America, you know, you it's as bad as calling someone a nigger. Can I say nigger? I just said nigger. But that's like the connotation around the term coloured to some people, yet it's just so normal because it is actually a racial classification in South Africa.
What if, like, and I'm sure this happened like a few times, what if there was like some white girl that liked a black guy and she got pregnant to him and they had a baby? Is she put out with the baby from her white family? Yeah?
Probably. I mean, at a certain point in time, yes. Are you familiar with Trevor Noah?
Yes.
So he's written a book called Born a Crime. I've known, you know, Trevor Noah since long before I even moved to New Zealand. When he was first, you know, up and coming, doing stand-up comedy. Also how amazing, like, to have gotten to where he's gotten, like, such immense pride.
He hosted the Grammys last week.
Having followed his career, but he talks extensively about the fact that his dad was white and his mum was black. His mum was from Soweto. She was black, South African, from a black community, and his dad was white. But the interesting thing here, and the question that you asked, was if it was a white woman who had a child from a black man, but his mum was a black woman who had a child from a white man, and that was as bad. They had to hide from people the fact that his dad was white, because there was also a real chance of him being ostracized by the black community.
I understand.
But it was actually a crime for a black woman to have had a child with a white man.
It's a crime.
Because that's above her station. It's a crime. He went through a lot of his childhood with people believing he was actually albino. And that's a lie that they perpetuated just to try and explain, I suppose, the color of his skin. He does this comedy show, stand-up about, it's called The Daywalker, where he actually explains, and I love how he uses comedy to actually explain so much that's real. He explains about that, about how he was like considered to be albino, and he had albino friends. And one day he was walking out in the sunlight, and they were like, "How, Trev?" Oh God, I'm not going to do an accent.
Do it.
No. I'm not going to do an accent. But they're like, "You can walk in the sun?" And it was like his lie almost unraveled, because they believed that he was like them because he was so light-skinned. But yeah, just things like that. It was considered a crime.
Humans are so screwed up, eh?
Yes.
We do some stupid shit to each other.
Like, history should have taught us so much about what we shouldn't do, and yet here we are. And how much has actually changed? For all of the lessons that we should have learned over time, that you think about Nazi Germany, you think about apartheid in South Africa, you think about the Holocaust that have happened. Like, we should have taken so many lessons away from that. Like, human behavior should have completely evolved as a result of the lessons that we have, as a result of the atrocities that have happened. And yet we perpetuate the same behavior. People's mentality doesn't change. It's actually mind-boggling.
Yeah, well, they say that like the stuff that's happening with America's quite divided, really divided. They say that that's what happens towards the end of a civilization, that people start breaking down barriers and stuff, and then it all starts dissolving, and they start deciding to unify. However, it's sort of the ending of like a civilization, how civilizations sort of pop up and disappear.
Yeah, well, given everything that's happening, that you have to believe that something has to give. Like, and if that's what it is, then that's what it is. But they've almost reached a stalemate. There's no way for them to move forward. Almost like something drastic would have to happen for them to find common ground again. Because
at the rate they're going, they're on like sort of like a brink of civil war.
Yeah,
with how divided that's
definitely the trajectory at the moment.
But it is
sad
what it
to
is.
see. It's sad to see, but again, it's like, how in this day and age, when facts are out there, like, how do we turn away from that? How do you not actually rationalize what is proper behavior, what is good for society, what is good for us as people? How can you not come to a table and have a discussion about our welfare, our children's welfare? How do we move forward? How do we progress? People are stuck in their own ideals because they don't want to give in, but it's about ego more than it is about the well-being of the general populace. It's about ego. It's, I don't want to give.
Do you think social media has a lot to do with that?
Yes, absolutely.
How do you think social media affects it?
I think that it's just too easy for people to perpetuate lies, and it's human nature for people to see what they want to see. So when they see false information out there, and they're already a certain way inclined, they're going to believe it. You know, misinformation has so much to do with what's happening in America right now. But equally, it has a lot to do with what happens in New Zealand. It's not to the same extent, but it definitely happens. You know, if you're a certain way inclined and if you see something, you go, oh, yeah, that's true. But how many people actually stop to question it? People like you and I do. You know, we'd delve deeper into it. We'd want more information. We would be like, we question things, which is what people should do. You should question things. Don't ever take things at face value, but people take things at face value. And that's where social media actually has such a major influence.
100%.
Is the people who take things at face value, see something and believe it to be true, and they go away and they're giving that to their children, they're feeding to their children. You know, they're trying to convince other people that it's true as well. And so, I mean, I think social media is powerful in terms of today's day and age, and it has the ability to be so good, so empowering. People able to push out their stories, able to empower other people, able to provide motivation and inspiration. Amazing. But at the same time, there is definitely an element of it that is a bit destructive.
Yeah, I feel like some people get into like stuck into like echo chambers.
Yeah.
Where they only follow the same people that believe the same things that they believe. So if they post something up, then other people like agree with it. Then they bounce off each other, you know, without even trying to see a different perspective of it.
Yeah.
And then it just grows and grows and grows, and they just feed off each other.
Yeah.
But I also think as well, like probably the news as well. On what the news reports and stuff is how people get affected into like the mind states or what their beliefs or how they feel about certain politicians or certain sides of the government. It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy because then they just feed off it. And also it starts to go down into your children when you start echoing the stuff out loud. You start telling your children your beliefs and those people over there, they're wrong, that's screwed in the head, you know, and the children grow up hearing this, and so it's kind of like that goes into sort of like a cycle of abuse, you know, that sort of descends down.
And that's a whole topic on its own, is how we actually have the ability to influence our children's beliefs and their preconceptions about things, where we equip them with information before they actually get into a situation in life, and they've got ideas about how it's going to go and how they're going to be received, because we've put those ideas in their heads. So yeah, no, I agree with you. We do. We tend to feed negativity to our kids, and people never stop to think that, no, I shouldn't. You know, our kids, when they're exposed to things, that should be where their learning starts. It shouldn't be because we've given them an idea that things are going to go a certain way, that you're going to be prejudiced against, or you know, people are going to have a bias because you're a certain skin color or because you come from a certain place, or you know, you don't have as much money as other people, so you're going to be treated differently. Why would you say that to your children? Or, you know, those people are bad because they belong to a certain religious group or they come from a different country. Again, like, I want my children to go and experience people. And if you find nuances or differences, let's talk about it. Let's talk about why people are different, but I'm not going to tell you in the first instance that you are different from that person's different from you. Like, just, I think if people took everything in the simplest form, rather than going into a situation already having preconceived ideas about what somebody is going to be. And this happens to me all the time. Like, I can tell when people go, oh, you're not what I was expecting. Happens all the time because we always have preconceived notions. But I feel like people feed it to their children more than they should be, you know, rather than tackling things at a time when you should be discussing it, when your children find the difference, when they are the ones who go, oh, why was that person behaving that way? You go, hey, you know what, maybe this is the reason, or this is maybe what you should do, and let's see how this works. But you've put your kids in the back foot by telling them to expect something to happen.
What do you think people preconceive about you?
I think people see my name. I meet new people all the time because of the nature of how I've worked for the last 3 years. I go to interviews all the time. So I meet with, you know, a lot of people, and a lot of people only know what's on my CV and they know my name. I think...
so what do you think they think?
So, and I know from having had discussions with people who've met me, like, that you know, they see Naz Mohammed and it's like, oh yeah, South African, Indian, and I'm not conventional anything. Like, I break the boundaries of conventional anything. I'm not a stereotype. I don't belong in any group, and it's not something that I set out to do intentionally. I don't say, oh, I'm going to defy this and I'm going to defy that. And have been rebellious by nature, but it's not because I set out to be that way. It's because I live by rules that make sense to me.
Okay.
And everything in my life growing up didn't make sense to me, and I rebelled against it. And oh gosh, I'm not going off on tangents.
No. It's great.
But people expect a Naz Mohammed, who is, you know, an Indian with maybe an Indian accent or maybe a South African accent, and they associate subservience with a certain demographic, and I don't think I come across as any of that.
Definitely don't.
That's
some bullshit.
No, that's some kind of bullshit right there. Yeah. So and I know that's the kind of reaction I get from people. So I most often would expect it. I think within 5 minutes of meeting me, people realize that they need to like take that and put it aside, you know. So yeah. But, you know, I think if you take your true self to every situation, every interaction, I think that it doesn't matter what people think about you before you get there. It's what you do in that, taking the opportunity to make an impression in that interaction. That's what they're going to leave thinking about you. It doesn't matter what they came into it thinking about you. So, yeah.
That's great. Just for all our lovely listeners out there, today is a Saturday afternoon in South Auckland.
It's Friday afternoon.
Those are some amazing bloody boy racers that run up the back of my road. You can
Welcome to the South Side.
Showing up their engines. Drives me crazy, man. But what can you do? We're in a garage. You see the timber I put up on the front?
Right.
Let's
Was
try
that the sound?
Try and protect some sound.
Yeah.
But like when those guys are like going crazy, like I can only do the best
That's
I
all right.
can. Yeah.
Is that right?
What is that? So you grew up and then there was apartheid ended when you were 12.
Yeah. So when I was around 12 years old, and so this is like to highlight the fact that I wasn't exposed to the language as well, like the language that comes with apartheid and racism, and we were putting on this production at school, and I
Sorry, the language.
I'll tell you in a second.
Okay,
I'll tell you in a second.
Sure.
And we were putting on a production at school, and it was called Racial Discrimination, right?
Fantastic.
Things, right?
How old are you at this time?
I was about 12.
When it just happened.
It was happening. We were going through this evolutionary period. We were nobody knew what to expect, and actually nobody knows what's going on. And what is a 12-year-old? No, I just know what's going on around me. You hear.
How long has South Africa been in this thing for before
Oh
that
God,
happened?
don't ask me that question because I don't actually know the answer.
Many years.
Yeah, a long time.
Okay.
A long time. And so, my teacher was like, Naz, you're going to play the lead, and we've got these scripts, and we're like going into it, and I'm saying, and eventually I was like, so who's playing Rachel? Because I had no idea what racial discrimination was. And I was waiting for them to say who this person Rachel was, because the word racial had I didn't know what it meant. I was like,
you never heard of...
what is racial discrimination? I did not know what racial discrimination meant.
I think that's a normal question for a 12-year-old, isn't it?
Yeah, but you would think yes, absolutely. I thought it was a normal question. It was like, does everybody know what racial discrimination is except me? Who's Rachel? Am I playing Rachel here? Am I Rachel? Who's Rachel in this play? And I think that's like the first time I actually had a conversation. My teacher had to explain to me what racial discrimination meant.
Do you have any white kids at your school?
No.
None?
No, God, no. And when I was, I think between 12 and 13 was the first time we had colored children.
It's just Indian kids at your school?
Just Indian. It's an Indian-only school. And I had gone to one school before then, and that was Indian only. And we had our first coloured pupil come. It was a thing. It was like, wow. Oh my goodness, there's a coloured person in our school, Wow. And they spoke differently. They sounded different because there's 11 different languages now in South Africa, and every single racial group sounds different. And within every racial group, they even sound different from each other. So you for the first time, you've got kids in your school who are not the same race as you, and they sound different. And there were 2 children who joined our school, and I'm still actually friends with one of them from when we were 12 years old. And and so it started. But I think in all of the time that I went to school, there was one white person in my school. In all of the time that I went to school, because I lived in a predominantly Indian community. And so we had a lot of black children come to our school for the first time. And even then, looking back at it, I just think how hard that must have been for them. It would have been so difficult because children are nasty.
Yeah.
Kids are horrible. Children are nasty. And that change for us was it was massive.
Yeah.
It was massive. And I don't know that we were equipped to deal with it. I don't know that the education system actually gave us enough to be able to manage that situation. And we didn't have the tools to be effective at helping other children integrate into our schools. So, you know, in hindsight, it could have been managed a lot better. But we just dealt with what we had to at the time, I suppose.
So you're at school. This is all happening when you're 12.
Yeah.
So you leave school at how old? About 16, 17?
So I was 17 and turned 18 2 months after I'd finished school. So I suppose year 13 here would have been the equivalent of year 12 in South Africa, which is when children finish school. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you go to uni?
Yeah. So uni afterwards is no publicly funded uni, so parents who could afford to send their kids to uni did.
Okay.
I was fortunate. I did go to uni after I finished school, but
and surely there was more different segregation at the uni.
Yeah. Yeah. So definitely a lot more. I had at that point been exposed to different race groups a lot more than obviously I had in the earlier years. So high school was a bit better. I played competitive netball, so we played against other schools. So I had a lot more exposure to people who didn't look like me. Also, you start socializing. I used to go out. We'd go into the city. We were exposed to other racial groups. But yeah, I think uni was probably the first time where you were actually in a multi-racial environment.
What was it like? Just strange?
It was. I don't think so. I don't know if people are capable of naturally being able to integrate or adapt. But it's something I've always been able to do. I've been able to adapt to new environments, and change doesn't faze me. So I embrace it, and probably as early as those years, it was never something that I shied away from or that gave me any type of apprehension. So I embraced that. Everything was new. It's a freedom. It's going to campus. It's like nobody's forcing you to go to classes. I'm not proud to say that. I
You wagged.
I wagged a lot of classes.
What were you there studying? What were you studying?
Oh my goodness, I can't believe that I did this, but I went to study IT.
Okay.
Of all things.
That's good. Not a bad thing to study.
But it was like I didn't know what to do. And IT was fashionable.
Oh my gosh.
Yes, I know. And now when I think about it, I was like, oh my God, I was the Indian girl who was studying IT. But it was fashionable, and that's what people were doing. And there was like, oh, there's a huge market for it, and you'll find a job. And so I studied IT, and I had a boyfriend at the time. And so I probably was not as astute when it came to applying myself to studies as I should have been.
Distracted.
Yeah. And then it was just, the freedom of, because I lived in a household where there were lots of restrictions.
Okay.
Because I grew up in a Muslim house.
Sorry, when you're going to uni, are you still living with your family?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
So.
Tell me.
So when you live in an Indian household, you don't live on your own. You don't live with a boy before marriage. You don't live on your own before marriage. It doesn't matter how old you are, you live in your parents' house. So there's no moving out.
Right.
This is it. Like,
no flatting, no.
Nothing. There is nothing.
Go clubbing?
You live at home until you get married.
Can you go clubbing? Can you go out?
If with me, definitely. If my parents didn't know, yes, I did. So they are not going to be watching this podcast, by the way.
I'm sure they won't.
So I
So you had a
lived in a
boyfriend
very,
at
very
17, 18.
restrictive environment.
So did you see your boyfriend at school?
So he'd already finished school at that time. He was 6 years older than me.
Oh, is this even more taboo? No?
Everything about my life has been taboo, Michael.
Okay.
Oh my God. Do you want to just like stop here?
No, you're good, man.
Are you
You're
sure?
good.
Is this where we're supposed to be?
This is where we're starting to get into the good stuff.
So I had a boyfriend.
Yeah.
And my parents never knew that I had a boyfriend until I was 18. When I was 18, I told them that I had a boyfriend, and they were like, "Oh, he has to bring his parents home." This is the kind of home I grew up in.
Bring his parents home.
Bring his parents home.
Okay, I understand. Conservative.
God. So yes, to say that they were conservative is an understatement. My parents are extremely conservative, very introverted, practicing Muslims. Grew up in a Muslim household.
Are you a practicing Muslim?
No, I'm not.
Cheers.
I am not a practicing Muslim.
She sips her wine.
As I sip my wine.
No,
Yes.
that's cool.
And I was very rebellious against religion from as early on in my life as I can remember. It was something that just made me feel like I was chained. I felt resentment because I could not reconcile the life I was living as a result of prescribed rules that religion had dictated to the one that I felt that I should be living, you know? And it was hard. It was hard. And so I was rebellious and resentful and probably acted out a lot. And as soon as I could break away from the religion mold, I did. As soon as I had my independence to live the way I wanted to, I did. And out of obviously respect, but I didn't have a choice, you know? You're living under your parents' roof. Your parents are larger than life. It's like you have to do what they tell you to do. I didn't have a choice. And we came from a massive family. My mom and dad are one of 10 children each.
Wow.
So our family is a tribe. We have, you know, our own, and growing up, that was my community. That's who I grew up with. And everybody lives their lives this way.
Right.
So, you know, it was only through my friends that I realized that other people live differently. And I was resentful that I didn't have the freedom to choose how I wanted to live or to do the things that my friends were doing. You know, clubbing was just not something that I was ever allowed to do. There was no point in ever asking my parents permission to do it because it was never something that would, you know, they would allow. And so I did a lot that they didn't know about.
It's the thing about, you know, when you grow up really sheltered and stuff, like, of course you're going to instantly rebel and want to try things, and if your parents aren't going to let you, you're still going to try it. You're
going to do them anyway.
Yeah.
And that's a major part of the way I parent now, is that my children know that they can ask or tell me anything. And my go-to answer is never no. I practice not saying no for a long time, especially when it comes to them. I practice not saying no. My go-to answer is never no. Even if they've asked me for something that I don't want to do, I never say no in the first instance. But I encourage them to make their case.
Right.
So when my kids come to ask me something, they already know which way I'm going to be inclined, but they come prepared to make their case. So it's like, Mama, you're probably going to say no, but here's the reasons why I think you should say yes. And so even if I think I want to say no, I say, let me think about it.
Lawyers.
Yes, God willing. Some God. And even if I do want to say no, I'll say, okay, let me think about it. Because I want to think about the reason why I'm going to say no. Because I know if I say no, I'm gonna get asked why. And wow. I need to be able to give a good enough reason why. Because no for the sake of saying no is not okay. Because I don't want to be that parent who restricts their children without a good reason. So even if I'm inclined to say no, I'd say, let me have a think about it. And I would think about it. And if I do want to say no, I know the reasons why I want to say no. And I'm going to tell you this. And we're going to have a logical discussion about my no. And you're going to say, yes, I understand. Or no, I don't understand and I don't agree. But if I have said no, it's for a good reason. And you're going to have to respect that.
You have some really good, strong points of view on how you parent.
Yeah.
Which is obviously very, very different to how you were parented.
Yes.
So.
And it's good that you
Set
make that observation, because
you make those decisions yourself to be a parent like that.
Yes. I always, and this is in life in general, not just with my children, I always try to put myself in somebody else's shoes. And I find it to be quite effective in dealing with other people. Is when I think about how I should react to something or what I should say in a situation, I always think about what I would want somebody to say to me if it was me.
Right.
And so my parenting methods with my kids, I always feel, if this was me, how would I want my parent to react? What did I not like about what my parents did, or how they behaved, or how they raised me, and how can I do differently? So I use that quite often
as a guide.
As a guide to when I parent, is I want to be the kind of parent I wanted to have when I was growing up. Every time I say no to my child, I remember how it felt every time I was restricted. Every time somebody said no to me, I remember how it felt. And I'm not so old that I don't actually remember what it felt like to be a teenager, and all of those feelings that I associated with it. And I actually, don't get me wrong, I had an amazing upbringing. I have just amazing parents who are good people.
Sure.
And I wholeheartedly believe that they did the best that they could do for me.
How many siblings did you have?
I have 2 younger siblings. So I'm the oldest of three girls.
You're the oldest?
Oldest of 3 girls.
So what was it like that time that you brought home your boyfriend's parents? Because I'd obviously never done this before, because you're the oldest.
That's right.
So what was that like?
That's right. So my sisters, I remember, were sitting on the stairs and listening to everything that was going on downstairs. It was nerve-wracking. I didn't want to be doing it. I didn't feel like I was ready to be doing that. And
is this customary?
It is.
It's the right way. This is the right way to do it.
It is the right way to do it. My dad is very old-fashioned, even still, he's changed his ideas about certain things because he's had to, because I've pushed the boundaries, and they've had to get comfortable with a lot of things that they never would have even thought that they would, be okay with. But it's how it's done. It's, my 18-year-old daughter's interested in a boy, he needs to bring his parents home. And everything in me it was awkward. It was so awkward. My parents are not sociable people.
What's the conversation like?
Oh goodness, my dad's like, apparently they've been seeing each other for a while, but we've only just found out about it, and we're not pushing for marriage because they're both still studying.
Marriage already?
Oh dude,
on the first meeting?
This is the intention already. It's like, you have a boyfriend, you're going to get married to him. It's not you get to have multiple boyfriends and play the field and decide who, choose somebody. It's like, if you have a boyfriend, this is the man you're going to end up with. This is the mentality. It's just how it is. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So growing up South African was actually, there's culturally we're not South African. Culturally we're Indian. Because that's the culture that was passed on through my grandparents and their parents before them. Like, my grandparents barely spoke English well. And their parents never spoke English hardly, but my parents obviously went to school and they spoke English, but it was as a result of that I learned multiple languages growing up as well, was because I had exposure to it.
What do you speak?
I speak English, Afrikaans, because we had to learn Afrikaans at school. I speak Hindi, Urdu. I read and write Arabic. I understand a bit of Zulu. Probably quite rusty, because obviously not something that I'm exposed to here.
So when you're growing up, as a kid and stuff, are you at home? Are you speaking Hindi, or are you speaking Afrikaans?
English.
At school, what are you speaking? English.
So we learned Afrikaans as a second language. So it was an exam language. It was an exam subject. So we had to.
You speak Hindi with your family?
No, we speak English.
Fascinating.
English. Yes, we speak English. We've only ever Mum and I would converse every now and again, if we didn't want somebody else to know what we were talking about.
Right.
And with my sister as well. My sister doesn't speak it as well as I do, but she understands everything. And being in New Zealand, I have friends here who are Indian, and so I speak Hindi with them sometimes. My Hindi is obviously not as good as what theirs is, and it's rusty, and the pronunciation's not as good, and sometimes I have a bit of laugh. But when I have a few drinks, then I think I speak it really well.
Sure.
But yeah, so Afrikaans, I can speak it. I can hold a conversation in Afrikaans, and I understand when other people are speaking it. But only, English has only ever been our first language. Yeah.
Going back to our story.
Yes.
So, did you marry the 24-year-old when you're 18?
I got pregnant when I was 19.
To the same boyfriend?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, had decided that I was done with studying IT at uni. I was like, not doing this anymore.
Second, third year?
Wasn't enjoying it after the second year. And was home for a while, and my neighbour's sister rang me up going, "Oh, what are you doing at the moment? Because our receptionist is literally just like up and left, and we're struggling for somebody to man the reception desk at work. Would you want to help out? We'll get paid for it, blah, blah." I was like, well, I'm doing nothing else, so I'll start doing this. And a few months down the line, I was like, they were like, "Oh, do you want to take on this job permanently?" I was like, well, I'm not doing anything else, I might as well. So I did. And a few months later, I was pregnant at 19. Okay. And it still to this day remains the single most devastating thing that has ever happened to me in my life. I felt like my world was just crashing down around me. Like, I did not know how to deal with it. It was the most taboo thing that could ever have happened. I did not know how to have a conversation with my parents in which I let them know that I was having sex, let alone that I was pregnant. And so the only thing that I thought that I could do was have an abortion. And so I set about. I was like, I don't know where I'm going to find the money to do this, but I'm going to do this. I have to. There's no alternative. And obviously didn't in the end. And my parents found out because, my boyfriend at the time, who eventually became my husband, he rang them up and said, this is what Naz is planning on doing, and this is what's happened, and blah, blah.
Were your parents for or against abortion?
So they were totally against it.
Right.
By the time I had a conversation with my mum, I had already decided that I wouldn't go ahead with it. But don't get me wrong, I was dead set on there was no way I was having a baby, and I still to this day firmly believe that women should always have the right to choose whether or not they do. And so my mum was like, she was on the phone to me at the time, and she says, "Just come home and we'll talk about this. Don't do anything silly." And I remember crying to her on the phone. I was like, "Are you ready to be a grandmother?" My mother was not even 40. She was a year older than I am right now.
Okay.
My mum was a year older than I am right now. And she was like, "Just come home." So, we got home, and whatever conversations had happened between them beforehand had happened. And my mum and dad, they were really, really supportive. I still commend them for the way they handled that, because I know how hard it would have been for my dad. My dad he's a patriarch of his family. It's like people come to him with their problems. He's the person that people turn to, like, to help them with their lives, and so it would have been really, really hard for him to deal with that. And yet, he again sat us down going, "Look, whatever's happened. We can't, there's nothing that we can say now that's going to change the situation." And he says, "I never would have forced you guys to get married now, because you're obviously both young, and that's something that would have come down the line. But the situation now is such that, we'll have to start planning a wedding." That was the end of it. And I was married 5 weeks later.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, pretty wise decision. Like, if you're faced with that and your daughter's going through that, and you have what's in front of you is like the opportunity to either look after her, or the opportunity as well to potentially lose her should you make the wrong decision.
Yeah.
You definitely made the right decision. Do you feel forced into that marriage?
Yeah.
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 That happens with Islanders as well.
Yeah, I wouldn't have gotten married to him if it hadn't have been for that.
Right.
I already knew that that was not a relationship that was gonna last.
Is that right?
Yeah.
You already knew then before you got married.
Knew, yeah.
Ouch, that's hard.
Yeah.
So you did the wedding for your parents?
Yeah.
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 Okay.
And so got married, and literally went through the motions of life. Like, it was the best way for me to describe it as existing.
Right.
Yes, you sort of you work and you progress and you live life. But
You in love with him?
no,
Really?
yeah. But yeah, it was existing.
Okay.
It was going through the motions of life, and I had no concept at the time of what a full, happy life looked like or should look like, or how to achieve that, or what that even meant for me. Like, I didn't know what I needed to get that, to have that. And so just, went through the motions.
Damn.
Yeah.
That'd be hard.
It looking back at it now, it's, I can't understand how
Yes.
and why,
Yeah.
but it's just how things were.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay, so you had obviously your first child at 19, 20.
I was 20 by the
You're
time
20.
he was born.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you had another 2.
Yeah. So he was 4.5 years old when we moved to New Zealand.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was 24 at the time. I had made a decision when I was about 21, and actually we'd just bought our house. We bought a house, we'd moved in, had, everything's brand new. We both had
In
good,
South Africa.
in South Africa. Both had good jobs. We have this little boy. My parents live around the corner. He went to them every day. So we had, what would most people would consider to be a good life, a comfortable life.
Are you happy?
In
Your
life,
marriage.
in my marriage, it's an interesting question, because one of the things that I say to my ex now, because he's convinced that we never should have separated, and I suppose he has rose-tinted glasses on to an extent, because we both lived in that relationship and we both knew that it wasn't working. And one of the questions I asked him when we separated, when he was adamant that we never should have, was, can you look back at all of the time that we've been married and point out to me a time that we were happy? And he was stumped, because he can't actually pinpoint a time in the whole time, the 13 years that we were married, when he could say we were happy during this time.
So even he wasn't happy?
He was happy because he was comfortable. And he's the kind of person who gets into a comfort zone, and doesn't really like change. And so this life that we had was a good place for him to be. And it's sort of what if you've read a book about what life should look like, this is what your life should look like. At this age, and I have a wife and I have a child and I have this and I have that and I have a good job and blah. But
Like a fence, their life.
yeah, exactly.
Picture perfect.
Yes, yeah. But underneath it all, the essence of it all, what do you actually have if you don't have happiness, if you don't have contentment, if you don't have peace, if you don't wake up every day feeling like you're grateful to see another day because, your life is abundant? And if you don't have that feeling, what do you actually have? And it took me a long time to actually realize that that's what I was stuck in.
Okay. Were you just 2 different people? Or?
We are 2 incredibly different people.
Okay.
And I think the most significant thing about us as people is that I've grown a lot since I was 18, and he's not really changed much. And our opinions of things differ so greatly. Our parenting styles are completely different. Our view of the world is incredibly different. So we don't really have much in common. But as an 18-year-old going into a relationship, and even as a 19-year-old getting married to somebody, I didn't even know myself. I had no idea what made me happy.
Yeah.
I have no idea what it takes to make me happy. I don't know what kind of person would make me happy. I don't even know what love is.
Yeah.
Like,
I couldn't imagine getting married at 19.
No, most people don't.
Yeah.
And once I had experienced a bit of life and had examples around me of people who were in happy, secure relationships, fulfilling relationships, it just highlights what you don't have.
Yeah.
But I harbored a lot of resentment growing up, like even
to who?
With my parents,
right?
Even before I got married,
right?
Before I got pregnant, because I was the oldest of 3 children, and I have a sister who's 3.5 years younger than I am, and my baby sister's 9 years younger than me. So it's quite, and actually the age gaps between my sisters and I are almost exactly the same as my children. So I always, growing up, felt that my parents treated my sisters differently, or they loved them more, or they just like gave them more attention, and I was just the forgotten one. And I think it's typical behavior and typical for an oldest child to feel that way. This is stuff.
They probably felt the same way about you.
Who did? My sisters.
Your sisters.
I was a bully.
You were a bully.
I was a bully to my sister, not the youngest one so much, because the age gap was so large that I was like, I had very nurturing motherly feelings towards my baby sister. But the middle one, she was the one who stole all the attention from me, and she took my parents' love away from me. I was an absolute bully to her. I beat her up.
Gets it.
I would have her up against the wall. Like, I remember vividly, like, this is who I was to her. But it was because I harbored so much resentment, and it was my outlet. It was like, you're the reason why I don't get everything that I want.
Right.
You know? My parents' behavior was very different. The way they not treated her in terms of how much they loved her, and even growing up in our teenage years, my sisters got a lot more freedom than I did. They were allowed to do a lot more things. And my mum would I told my mum that I had a boyfriend when I was 18, right? Just to give you an example. And I was confiding in my mother, going, hey, she knew, because she could sense the behavior, and I was like secretive about stuff. So I told her, I was like, look, I have a boyfriend. And what does she do? She tells my dad. Like, tells my dad.
I love it.
And this is how this all comes about, right?
Girls, man.
Anyway, my sisters have boyfriends, and it's like, mom's happy to keep their secrets and let them sneak away and go and have like rendezvous. Dad doesn't need to know any of this, sisters are going clubbing, yeah, mom's covering up for them, and so I'm here going, what the actual, this is not okay. And so I harbored a lot of resentment, like, to my parents, to my mum. I rebelled because I was like, feeling this way, and I know I was disrespectful, which I'm not proud of.
This is through your early 20s.
This was actually in my teenage years as well,
okay,
but even going into my early 20s, and I felt so entitled.
Right.
I felt like people owed me things, I felt like people owed me something, and like people should be doing more and giving me more, and just had no idea. I had no idea, honestly. Like, I look back at that time of my life and I just realize, who the fuck were you?
Well, hindsight's a great thing.
Yeah.
You learn so much about yourself.
But I try to use those experiences to teach me how not to be, and also what not to do with my kids.
Sure.
And coming full circle to how we started this conversation is like that I use that. The way I felt, I remember the way I felt and why I felt that way, and just am determined to never make my kids feel that way. So, and I actually have conversations with my kids where I say to them, look, I don't know how to do this 100%. I'm still learning how to be a mum. It doesn't matter if I've been a mum for 18 years. Every year you get older, I have to learn how to be your mum. I'm a mum of an 18-year-old son for the first time this year, for almost a teenage daughter.
Wow.
For the first time. And I don't know how to be a mum to a teenage daughter. I've never been a mum to a teenage daughter. All I can do is draw on my own experiences. And I've told my children that you are allowed to criticize my job. You are allowed to grade me. You are allowed to tell me when I'm doing a bad job. Tell me why I'm doing a bad job. Let's talk about this. Let's talk about what you don't agree with. What you don't like about me as a parent.
It's quite a different approach.
Yeah.
It's quite I think it's quite a mature, open approach to parenting.
I think so, because if you think about your job, you have reviews in your job where you sit down with your manager, right? And they're like, hey, you've been doing really well. I think you can improve in this area. But your job is such a big part of your life, right? And you're like, I want to do a good job. I want to be the best at this that I can possibly be. So getting critical, okay, not everybody takes criticism on board the way you and I would, because I use criticism as a way for me to get better.
As long as it's constructive.
Exactly. As long as it's constructive. I welcome it because it helps me improve, right? Why wouldn't I do that in the most important job in my life, which is being a mum. This is the most important job in my life. And the people who get to grade me at this job are my children. Why would I not get their feedback along the way? Why would I wait until they were adults for them to turn around and say, hey, you didn't do so good at that, or I wish you had done this more? Why would I not give them the opportunity and give them a platform now to say, hey, mom, I don't actually like that, or how, can we talk about this, or why not? To me, it makes sense. It doesn't mean that they get to disrespect me, because that is a hard rule in our house, is that there's no disrespect.
100%.
I don't do rules as a rule, but there are 3 things in my house that are non-negotiable: as integrity and honesty, as respect, and as kindness. Right? And as long as my children abide by that, and it's such a normal part of who they are now that they don't even have to think about it, but just like being disrespectful is not something that is ever tolerated in any way, shape, or form. You're allowed to disagree with me. 100% you're allowed to disagree with me, but you do it in a way that's disrespectful and that's constructive. If you're upset, teenagers, hormonal aggression, it comes as part of the package, but you take that to your room. When you're calm enough, we can discuss things, but you don't bring your aggression to a discussion. You don't be disrespectful to anybody else. So we found our rhythm. We found what works for us. Sometimes I try new things. Sometimes what we try doesn't work, and that's okay. But for the most part, I think that we all want to make our family work. So we all try. And I'm open to to their suggestions of doing things or not doing things.
How old were your children when you came to New Zealand?
When I came to New Zealand, I had one child. He was 4.5.
Okay.
So he was 4.5.
You're like 23.
I was 24. 24 when we moved here, and then he was 5.5 when my daughter was born.
Yep.
And then...
Why New Zealand?
Why did we come to New Zealand?
Yeah, why New Zealand? Why not Australia? Why not America?
So and actually Canada was an option as well. So like I said, I was 21 when I made the decision to move. And it was because we had a child, and I didn't see a future in which I could give him what I had growing up. Like being able to play outside, just feeling safe.
Right.
Is just not something that I could see my children ever having, or my child at the time ever having.
Things have become dangerous?
It was really dangerous. So the crime was the hugest factor. It was probably the factor, but also it was,
I see.
We were in a really unhappy marriage as well.
Yeah.
And we thought that potentially going out and getting a new start and a fresh start might be what we needed. So I started researching places when I was about 21, and started putting out feelers and applying, to different agencies, gathered all the information that I needed of what we would need to do in order for us to be able to move overseas.
Wow.
So yeah.
Pretty big for a 21-year-old.
Yeah, oh yeah, I got us to New Zealand without any help from anyone else. Like from getting our visas to getting our medicals to getting a job, I got my ex the job that he had in New Zealand. I literally applied for jobs. I answered questions on his behalf. I talked him through his entire interview process. All he knew of that entire process was that he was given a ticket and he boarded a plane to New Zealand. But the decision to come to New Zealand was because he had family here.
Okay.
So, anywhere we went would have been, a major change for us. But I figured that coming to a country where we at least would have known people would have made that transition a little bit easier. And so that was...
Just stop you there for a second.
Yeah.
Breathe.
I can talk a lot, Michael.
Oh, you're good. And we are back.
We're back.
Cheers.
Cheers. What are you drinking? Talk to me about what you're drinking, Michael.
Pure Piranha, which is the seltzer. Which is, why do I drink it? I drink it because it's low calorie and it's real clean.
Right.
It's only 5%, but I find it's much cleaner on my system. I'm getting old, Naz, like...
You're a lot younger than me.
Am I?
Yes.
What?
Yes, you are.
I didn't know that.
How old are you?
I'm turning 38 tomorrow.
Stop it. Oh no, you're the same age as me. I didn't know. Why did I think you were so much younger?
I don't know. I'm old, man.
No, it's not old. Shut up, Michael. I'm not old, and if I'm not old, you're not old.
Sure. But the older I get, like, the more I try and look for, like, stuff that's easier and cleaner to drink when I do drink.
Yeah. To be honest, I've been doing the same.
Right.
Which is how the whiskey soda combinations come about.
Oh, okay.
I've always been loved drinking whiskey, but now I've started doing the soda mix with it, which is.
What did you used to mix with it before? Coke?
No, not Coke. I would probably
L&B.
do like a tonic or like a lemonade maybe. But I try to stay away from, and so even red wine, I've stopped drinking red wine.
Oh, okay.
I do drink it every now and again because I do quite enjoy it, but I do try to go for the cleaner option, and I don't even drink as much as I used to because I've been trying to lose weight and living a fitter, healthier life. So steer away from it for the most part.
I'm going to come back to that. I am. Is that something I want to talk about?
Of course you do.
No, because you have like I think a fascinating story about this. Anyway, came to New Zealand, you had a little 4.5-year-old.
Yes.
Right. Then you had another 2 kids as well. How old is your oldest when you do separate from your husband?
13.
13.
And the youngest is 3.
How hard of a decision is that?
How hard of a decision was it to separate?
Yeah.
It was.
Because I guess, just before you answer, I guess as a mother, you're also thinking as well about the ages of your children and what it's going to be like for them. And
Yeah, 100%. So I probably had a light bulb moment when I turned 30.
Okay.
I just had my youngest child, and I'd taken all 3 of my children back to South Africa. It was the one and only time that I've gone back in the whole time that I've lived in New Zealand. But I figured I didn't have any family support here. I have 3 children. Also, I'm not going to have a long period of time again because I worked where I could go and have an extended holiday with my family. So decided I was going to go and spend 3 months in South Africa, and took all 3 of my children, and I celebrated my 30th birthday while I was there, and had a massive self-reflective moment, like sort of just, remember lying in bed, and my mum had just come into the room, and we'd had a moment, and she wished me a happy birthday, and I was just so grateful to have spent that birthday, because it was the first birthday in 5 years that I'd spent with my family, and it was a significant birthday. And she'd taken the baby away with her, and I remember lying in bed going, what have I actually achieved in the last 10 years, looking back to when I was 20? And yes, I have my children, but what do I have? Like, looking back over the last 10 years, what do I have now that I didn't have 10 years ago? How has my life improved? What do I have that is of value apart from my children?
You guys have a house, right?
Not in New Zealand.
Okay.
Not in New Zealand. So after we sold in South Africa, we came to New Zealand. We never bought a house.
Okay.
But then I got to thinking, in 10 years' time, when I'm looking back at the next 10 years, what am I going to have to show then? Because right now, I don't see the trajectory of my life changing at all, where I'm going to be able to tell a different story in 10 years' time. Because the next 10 years are going to go exactly the same as the last 10 years have. And it doesn't matter what material things I have. But how would I have changed as a person? What would I have to show for the 10 years that would have gone in the next 10 years? And how do I change that? Because I don't have a recipe right now that's going to make it any different to what the last 10 years was. And it was quite a significant moment for me, because I realized that I didn't want that. I didn't want to spend another 10 years in almost a nothing, relationship where I just went through the motions and just tried to do the best that I could for my children. But also, more importantly, I realized then, and I believe this 100% right now, is that if I am not a whole and healthy and happy person, I can't be a good mother.
You have to look after yourself first before you look after other people.
Right? Yeah. And the most significant, so I consider myself to be 2 significant things in life. I am somebody's child, and I am somebody's mother. And I try in life to be the best that I can. And it might sound a little bit weird given everything that we've talked about up until now regarding being a child, but that is the two things that concern me. Those are the two sets of people whose opinions matter the most, who I want to impact the most positively that I can, who, when all is said and done and when the last chapter of my life is written, I want to be able to say, I did good by you, right? Those are the most significant relationships in my life, is my parents and my children. And my parents, because they've invested their whole lives in me. I owe it to them to give them a sense of pride and fulfillment and joy from their life's work. And so I try to make them proud, even when sometimes I know that I haven't. And we'll come back to actually talking about my relationship with my parents now, but also my children. And my children is what the rest of my years is going to be invested in. And I realized that I can't be a good mother because I'm not a happy person. I'm not a whole person. I'm not a healthy person.
This is an important question, and I have to ask it. Yes. But I ask it with all respect, so I want you to think about your answer before you answer it. But what about your marriage brings you down so much? Because you have to say this guy for 12 years, I'm figuring now.
Yeah.
Okay, so what about this doesn't make you happy?
We had
toxic, or is it
so there was never any abuse.
Right.
There was never any physical abuse. There was not even mental abuse. There was no controlling factor. There was no but having nothing is just as bad. Feeling nothing is just as bad. But more importantly for me, I felt like something was stolen from me. I had this feeling that things have happened that have not been in my control. And there's just so much resentment for me, especially because I value having control over my life, that just always was there, that just never allowed me to, I say allowed me to enjoy life, but I didn't have what I needed to enjoy life. People, not lots of people know this about me, but I'm actually a romantic at heart. Like, I've grown up reading romance novels. My mum used to read romance novels, and when I was probably a bit younger than I should have been when I started reading them, I used to steal her books and read them. And so I've have this like idea. I'm not ideological necessarily. Like I know that I'm a realist, but I know that love exists. And for me, I was resentful that I didn't have it. It
wasn't fulfilling.
It wasn't. There was just, I was literally going through the motions of life, like just existing day to day. Not even hopeful that something would change. That
you ever communicate these things to him?
Yeah, of course. No. But when you're in a marriage and you're in a relationship with somebody, you're not exactly going to turn around and say, well, I don't actually love you. But everything that was wrong about our marriage stemmed from that. It was, we had disagreements about everything, but also we were really different people. And the older that I got, the bigger that divide became, the bigger the disagreements became, because we were just at odds with each other on so many things. And I hated his way of parenting. He grew up in an environment where there was just no affection. So he didn't know how to give that. But also his logic was really warped. He just had a really different sense of what should be than what I had. Right. I look at things from a very rational, logical perspective, and his is based on ideals and how things used to be or how things should be. And very traditional. And so there was never any forward thinking on his part, whereas I was just all about, I don't have to do things the way they've always been done, because the way things have always been done is not necessarily the right way. So why wouldn't we do things differently if it's going to actually be better? So we would, there was just a lot, everything, too much.
So you have this moment on your 30th birthday where you realize where you're at and what you feel like you're missing out a little bit on life, and that you don't want to spend the next 10 years going through the same motions again.
Yeah.
So is it when you decide that you need to...
but it's also fear of failing my kids. It's a fear of failing my kids because I don't know how I can be the kind of mother that I want them to have.
Right.
And I don't know how to be this, and for it not to be so hard for me to bring that every day. which is not natural to me, right? It's not natural for me right now because I'm having to put this on for my kids. And
It's exhausting.
it is exhausting. It's exhausting. And so I think I made a decision on that day that, and still I teach my kids this, is that in life you don't always have control of things. So, but if you do have the ability to change something that you're not happy with, you should.
Don't
Right.
settle.
Never settle.
Yeah.
Never settle. You change the things you can change and you learn to accept the things you can't, right? But if something was within my control to change, I owed it to myself to do it. And we were talking earlier about selling myself short, and I strive never to do that. But that was a major lesson in my life. It was a point at which I was like, I deserve so much more. Why am I settling for this? Why? Because I'm afraid of how I'm going to feed my kids, because I'm afraid of how I'm going to take care of them without somebody else. I have no family in New Zealand. I have friends, but you can't rely on your friends to bring up your kids. Do I have what it takes to let go of my husband and still be everything that my children need? And so this was a decision that I struggled with because I had to figure out a way to make it work. Right.
Crazy.
I
You
enjoy
have no family here in New Zealand.
no family in New Zealand.
He
no.
does.
He did, and at that time he even had a brother. His brother had moved here, and 2 cousins who lived here. And so it took about a year more for me to communicate that to him.
Okay.
But I did say to him, I said, nothing about our relationship works. We argue. I hated going home.
Right.
I would rather stay longer at work than go home because I knew that what I was going home to was just, it made me feel bad. There was nothing that I felt that was good. I love seeing my children, but even then I had nothing left to take home to them. Like, what am I giving them when I go home? So I actually avoided going home early. And when I did, I spent a lot of time in my bedroom. The kids would come spend time with me in my bedroom.
Or
but
you distance yourself from him as well.
yeah, I was just distancing myself. We never shared a bedroom. Oh God, this is not even something that I admit to people, but we never shared a room for a long time. And I used the kids as an excuse, but it was just, I was mentally distanced for a long time. But, it happened that we actually were having an argument one day, and I said to him, look, you and I are both not happy in this relationship. There's no point in us being in it. Let's find a way to actually separate ways. And at the time, he agreed. He was like, yes, yes, yes. And for a year after, we had conversations in which we actively discussed separating.
Right.
When the time eventually came, and I had moved jobs. I left a really good job in the city and took up a job closer to home because I needed to be close to the kids in order for me to be able to get them to school and daycare and get them in the afternoons and be close to them if anything happened in the day and, having to go to school and things. I needed to have a job close to home, and so I moved closer to home. I tried to get all my finances to a point where if I was the only income, I can actually put a roof over our heads and put food on the table and be okay doing that without any support.
Are you're obviously a permanent resident, have permanent residence?
Yes. Yeah.
So do you qualify for, at the time, working income support for solo parents, that sort of stuff?
No.
Shit.
Yeah. So the only thing that I did qualify for was additional early childhood education support.
ECE.
Yeah. And holiday programs.
That's it.
So I could continue working, and I couldn't use childcare as a reason
no
not to.
accommodation supplement, no solo parent
nothing
assistance.
Nothing at the time. And
all these things don't help you in your decision that you want to make.
no.
They're making it harder and harder for you because you have to, that there's a X amount that you have to make week to week just to feed these kids
Yeah.
and pay the rent and stuff if you want to do this.
Yeah.
I understand.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I completely understand why people stay in relationships. Like, I'm not saying that it is something that everybody can do or everybody should do if they're not in a happy relationship, because I know how hard it is.
Well, it takes real guts to do what you did, because you're in a foreign country, you've got no family support around you, you've got no one else that can you can really help you out with the kids financially. Like, you really have to like bend over backwards and figure out like how to make this work with 3 kids. One's a 13-year-old, 14-year-old?
13.
Yeah. And the youngest is how old
3.
at this time? 3.
Yeah.
Mate, okay.
Yeah. So, eventually, we had a massive argument one day and things came to a head, and I was like, this is it. I think now it's time. I think you need to get your stuff and go, because I can't keep doing this. I'm like, my kids can hear what's going on. And that's the other thing, is that they're exposed to this environment every day. It just killed me. It killed me that I was the reason I was letting this happen.
Right.
And I just got to a point where
enough was enough.
Enough is enough.
Yeah.
I can't keep doing this. I can't do this anymore. And so that day when he packed up and left, he firmly believed he was coming back.
Right.
And it was the last day he ever spent under my roof.
Right.
There was just no going back from that. Right. For me, it was just shutting the door on that. And that was 5 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah. Anzac weekend this year will be 5 years since that day, and I've never for a second in all of the time that's gone by since then ever regretted it, not for 1 second. And it hasn't been easy. The first year was hard, like it was hard, but I think the alternative was worse. And almost immediately, there was such a shift in the energy in my house, in my attitude to living. It was, sometimes when you have somebody else and you rely on somebody and people let you down, it's harder than when you are it and you have to do things and you only have yourself, because if you let yourself down, then you're accountable to yourself. Yeah. But I'd rather be that person who had to give 200% to a situation.
And depend on yourself.
Rather than having to rely on somebody else to do it and be let down, because that is more frustrating than putting in the hard work. And so I think that's where I was. It was, yes, I have to do all of this stuff, but it's like there was a sense of achievement for me. I felt a sense of accomplishment. I felt like I was doing something to change my circumstance, and that just gave me the energy that I needed. It gave me the impetus to just keep doing it. Like, it was literally day by day by day. It's putting one foot in front of the other. It's surviving. It's surviving. It's like literally waking up every day going, yep, we're doing this again. Though. I was happier. Yeah. There was this huge weight that had lifted off me. And at the back of my mind, I felt that whatever it takes to make this work is what I'm going to do. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what I have to do. Like, my focus was so sharp. I was unflappable in my resolve. Like, I just knew I have made this decision, which was unpopular with everyone, with friends, my parents, with the world. Because who does that? Yeah, people were like, what are you on about? Like, I lost friends by choice. I lost friends by choice because I didn't need anybody standing on the sidelines telling me that I'd done something wrong. I just didn't need that. And actually, that whole experience taught me just to cut out negativity from my life. Ruthlessly cut out. And by negativity, I mean people. Even now, I cut people out of my life because I'm a huge proponent of positive energy. And I'm like, if somebody is bringing negativity into my life, into my space,
you don't need that bullshit.
You're not welcome here. And
you got enough things to think about
right.
without having to worry about other people bringing in negative stuff into your life.
It was such a huge change for me just to not have that. To not have to worry about that. I'm like, this takes up a lot of energy. This daily grind, it's hard work, It's making sure also my children are emotionally healthy. It's taking care of their welfare through this. I've made this decision. I need to make sure they're okay. you know. Also, like, you know how I always look ahead and then look back from there. You know, what do I want my children to be saying about this time of their lives when they're grown? How do I want them to remember it? And that's what I want to do now. How I want them to remember this time is what I'm going to do to ensure that that's what they have. You know, I'm going to make them feel emotionally secure. I'm going to make them feel loved. I'm going to make them feel like, you know, we are a family who are happy and healthy, and we have each other, and that's never going to change. So, yeah, it was hard work. It was a constant. It's a constant effort to try and keep that equilibrium, to make sure that your children, and it was then that it started. It's that we can talk about everything. Whatever you're feeling, whatever questions you have, I don't want you to think that I've made this decision and you don't have any say.
What was it like before you broke up? Like, did you have those sort of rules in place in the house, or was it?
I have always, and also because of how I've grown up, where my parents were not affectionate. You know, saying I love you was not a natural, normal thing in my household. So I knew that my parents loved me, but there were no hugs, there were no, you know, kisses before bed, there were no I love yous. And so that was something that I've done since the day my child was born, is that I made the decision that I would tell my children and let them know and make them feel loved every single day of their lives. And so even today, every one of my children gets an I love you before I leave home for work in the morning, at night before we go to bed. It's a natural, just normal thing in our lives. My children show affection openly. They're just so used to receiving it that it's just a very natural part of our lives.
I have been very lucky to meet your children.
You have.
And I can honestly say, like, me and Noah have both been very impressed. Articulate, amazing social skills. You're doing an amazing job.
Thank you.
You were real confused when I asked you to come on the podcast, eh?
I'm still confused.
You're still
I'm
confused.
like, Michael, why don't you tell me and your listeners why I'm here?
I think you just did. Because I think you see the podcast as like people that come on already naturally have achieved things in life and stuff. But I need you to realize that everything that you're talking about is everything that you've achieved. You are inspiring. You're amazing. Everything that you've done, like talking about that and how it worked for you and in the last 5 years, and you are a strong-minded, inspirational solo mother who's devoutly staunch and very, very articulate and very proud about it. That's why you're sitting where you are right now, because there are so many solo parents out there, for real, that are listening to this right now that need to hear this. Or there's people that are stuck in marriages or stuck in relationships and are parents of children that have an inkling that it's not what they want to be or where they want to be, but don't know how to move forward. That's why you're sitting here. Everything that you've gone through and the way that you hold yourself, you know, is the term that comes to mind is with mana. You always hold yourself with mana. I've known you for probably a couple of years now, and I can honestly say that. And so it wasn't even a question in my mind whether Naz is coming on the podcast. She has to come on the podcast. Because and that's what makes you someone that needs to be on the podcast as well, is because you don't recognize within yourself the achievements that you've made. So because you have that sort of humble look about yourself, or you see your past with such humility, that's why you need to sit there and talk about it. And that's why I need to guide you through it, because it's important for people to understand, like, for someone like you that's come to a different country with no family around you, with not even got wind support, to like decide to become a solo parent, but have that feeling of like, I know what happiness should feel like. I'm not happy at the moment. I know where I should be as a parent. I know what I need to do, and I haven't got this much support about it. People around me are saying that it's going to be the wrong decision, but I'm going to do it anyway because something inside me tells me that I got to do it. And so, so when I thought about you bringing you on the podcast, it wasn't even a question. Like, I knew in a heartbeat that you would be a great person to sit here and talk. And you've done just that. Like, anyway, I wanted to say that to clarify now, hopefully that you understand now why you're here. You know, because you wanted to see my list of questions.
I was like, can you please give me a briefing? Can you send me some questions? I in life, okay. So in order to make my life work, I have to be. I'm prepared. In my job, I have to be prepared. I have to be 5 steps ahead of everybody else. In life, to make my family work, I need to be like, boom, boom, boom. I'm a strategizer.
Sure.
I'm all about strategy.
But what could prepare you more than everything that you've already been through?
Yeah. So I'm like, can you let me be prepared when I come to this. I never go to any meeting unprepared. Why would I show up to this podcast? Like, even when I showed up here, I'm like, oh, what's going to happen? Yeah. But
so you've been on this journey for the last 5 years.
Yes.
Okay. It's mind-boggling. And I really salute you for
It's been the best 5 years of my life.
There we go.
It has been hands down the best 5 years of my life. People always talk about, I'm on a journey to find myself. People say that, and I never do, because I feel like I'm on a journey to create myself, and that's what's been happening. I feel like I started living 5 years ago. It was the feeling of just, I value control, and I felt that for the first time I had control over my life. Having grown up living by a prescribed set of rules dictated by religion or culture or parents, and then being in a marriage that, again, I had a different level of freedom, but it still dictated how I lived my life. And for the first time, I had the freedom to just do life and live life the way I wanted to raise my children the way I wanted to. And none of it was easy, but all of it was liberating. And the sense of accomplishment that I got out of it, being accountable to myself, just being accountable to myself, is that, that was the turning point in my life, I think. So the last 5 years, it's not all been easy. I've hit rock bottom.
Sure.
I have hit rock bottom. I know what it feels like to not know how you're going to feed your children. I know what it feels like, and I don't wish that on anyone else. But your wounds become your wisdom, and you wear your scars with pride. And I always say that all of the experiences that I've had in life almost serve as building blocks in my life. And I've taken something away each time I've had an experience that I've been able to learn from. It's never wanting to have that feeling again, never wanting to be, but what do I have to do to never get back there? What do I take away from this experience? How do I learn from it? How do I get better from it? So
also, it's teaching your children as well.
Yes.
That it's worthwhile to fight for happiness.
Yes. And
it's also teaching them as well, like let's just say that you never separated, okay?
Yeah.
But it's also kind of unconsciously teaching them that this is what marriage looks like. This is what it's going to look like for you.
100%.
It's normal to argue. It's normal to be unhappy, but this is what it looks like.
Yeah.
And so they kind of follow that naturally.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But to watch their mother decide to make such a strong decision, and move out and go on her own path and carry everything with her.
Yeah.
When they get older, they'll understand.
Yeah.
But for your daughter and for your sons as well, it's such a massive. It will be a massive learning curve for them to really understand how important it is to fight for your happiness and for your children's happiness.
Yeah.
You said to me before that when you were younger, you used to play a lot of netball.
Yeah.
Through your marriage, did you continue to be involved in sport and stuff, or no?
No. So when I finished school, I never pursued. Yeah, I never pursued netball. And it's really funny because I never thought about the fact that I looked good and I was fit and I had a really good body because I was so active.
Right.
And so at 19 I got pregnant.
Right.
And I had this child, and 6 months after he was born, I looked like a bloody elephant. And I was like, this has never happened to me before, but you're not active anymore. And so I literally, from then on, from the time I was 20 years old, I have gone, I've never gone back to being at a good weight, being at a healthy weight, never gone back to being active. I got stuck in taking care of kids. But also when you're unhappy and you console yourself with food and with alcohol, and it just becomes your coping mechanisms, and so you like get stuck in a really, really unhealthy cycle. And that happened to me for a really, really long time. Really long time. And even after I separated, I think out of habit more than anything, I used food and alcohol as coping mechanisms. It was, if I had a good day, I'm going to have a drink. If I had a bad day, I'm going to have a drink. You know, I put the kids to bed and I'm like, oh, just going to treat myself to a drink, which becomes a bottle, of course. And so that was something that I, last year, got to a point where I was like, you can't use that as an excuse anymore. You've got your shit together. Like, why are you still doing this? What reason do you have? And again, it's me keeping myself accountable to myself, right? What reason do you have for looking the way you do? Why are you here right now? Like, you don't even want to look at yourself in the mirror. What is the reason for this?
Right.
And so that sort of sparked some changes in my life. Because again, it was like, I'm about being a healthy, happy, whole person for my children. Am I giving them that? Like, self-reflection is a big part of my life. I often think about the things that I do, the things that I say, try to find if there's a different, better way of me doing things, or, you know,
But you strike me as someone that really looks at like how you can authentically be better,
Yes.
do better for yourself.
Yeah.
And how you can be a better version of yourself.
I don't come up with shit just by myself. Like,
Right.
I listen to podcasts, you know, I watch YouTube. If there's something that I don't like about myself, I find ways of improving it. And I make small changes that then become habits and just become a natural way for me. It's like, you know, if I didn't like something, I used to be quite a person who reacted. I reacted to things in the moment without thinking about it, you know? And it is,
Same.
yeah. But I've taught myself to change.
It's not healthy, is it?
It's not healthy.
Take a breath.
Yeah,
Think
yeah.
about it.
That's right. Exactly. And, but also, like, to listen to other people, you know? Also, what does it mean to be kind? I know I want to be a certain way. How do you do that? Also, how do you project positive energy? How do you ensure that you have an environment that exudes positive energy? What do you need to do? How do you need to be? This is not, yes, a lot of it is instinct. You know, I'm still who I am, but there are things that I want to be better at. And so I teach myself and I use the tools that are available to me because I want to be better. I want to do better. In order for me to progress, in order for me to get to a certain place, I need to be able to do these things to get there. And like I said to you, I strategize. I have a game plan. It's like, you want the outcome to be something. What do you have to do to get to there?
So when you decided that you wanted to lose weight, what did you do?
What did I do? The day after I decided I wanted to lose weight, I got up early and went for a walk. So at this time last year, I had gone through phases where I'd lost weight and then I'd
This time last year, I think we've just gone into level 4 lockdown.
That's right. And I had gone through phases over the years preceding where I had, you know, lost weight and I'd gained back and I'd lost. So I knew
Right.
I knew how to lose weight.
Yeah.
I knew what I needed to do. I knew the science behind it. I knew what to do. It was just a matter of doing it. So in terms of like, I'd never been big on exercise. Like,
Why?
ever. Just never been big on it. Like, I'd just never done it. Like, there were times when I'd gone for walks and things and I really enjoyed it, but then when I stopped and I never gave it any other thought. And I think the most simple answer to that question is I was bloody lazy.
Okay.
Like,
It's not for everyone. Some people just don't click with exercise.
no, I was
But do you feel better? Did you feel better when you started exercising?
So I went, yeah, like I said, I went for a walk the next day. And then the next day I woke up and went for a walk again. And the next day I woke up.
When you say a walk, like how long? How far?
So at that time I was doing like 4 to 5 Ks.
Okay.
And not, you know, it was a brisk walk. And I tried to, and look, I understand the science behind high intensity interval training. I know what promotes fat burning. I knew all of this. I had all the information that I needed to be able to get fit, to be able to lose weight. I just wasn't doing it. right? Like Nora and I had been doing intermittent fasting as well when you guys were going for a wedding too. And, you know, she did really well, but I was the one who like pushed her to do intermittent fasting because I was doing it at the time as well. And I actually had a lot of success doing it. But I'd fall off the wagon and just never get back on it. And so last year, I started doing walks, and then like most people who exercise will tell you they become more conscious of what they eat and, you know, what they drink. And so the exercising sort of is a catalyst for you starting to eat healthier. And I started feeling better as well. But for me, it was getting to the right mental space. And I was there, and I wanted to make a change for myself, because if people don't take anything else away from this podcast today, I think the most important thing that I want to say is that people should love themselves first. Like, I cannot stress enough how important it is for people to respect themselves, to love themselves, and for the opinion of yourself that should matter the most is your own. Because how you think about yourself is how other people think of you. What I take into a new interaction with somebody is I value myself. I think of myself as being an equal to somebody I'm going to meet. And I meet influential, successful people every single day of my life, right? But I meet them as an equal because I value myself enough. I have a high enough opinion of myself that you are not better than me.
Where'd you get that from? Where do you think that comes from?
Honestly, I don't know. And sometimes I wonder if it's arrogant. But at the same time, I think, who's going to love me more than I love myself? And actually, who should love me more than I love myself? And actually, how can I expect somebody else to respect me if I don't respect myself? Because people project that. When people have low self-esteem, they project it. Right?
It's so ugly.
It's not.
It's like, you can feel it. You can feel it when people like try and, not even if yourself, but if you feel other people putting other people down, then I'm just like, ooh.
But people put other people down because they don't think enough of themselves. Like, when has a person ever felt strong or powerful by making somebody else feel small? But they do it because they think it'll make them feel strong and powerful. A person who actually feels strong and powerful uplifts other people.
It's the bully mentality.
It is the bully mentality. It's a person who feels insecure. That's why I was the bully. When I said I was a bully to my sister, that's the reason why. I was insecure. But somebody who has a high enough, like, you know your own worth, love yourself, respect yourself, and that's what you will take with you to every interaction you have. And people will feel about you the way you feel about yourself. And this is proven to be true for me time after time. Like, I go into interviews, and it doesn't matter who I'm going into an interview with, but I take the best version of myself to that interview. And I'm going to give you what I want. Like, I'm going to give you myself. I don't pretend to ever be somebody else, right? And like I was saying, people may have preconceived ideas about me, but when they walk away, they know who I am. And they are going to respect me because I respect myself.
Yeah.
And they do. So that, I think, has been, some of it is taught. Some of it, you know, you need to start making small changes in life. And
so during lockdown last year, were you going through all this?
Yeah.
Right. So what were you doing every day? Because you'd have all the kids at home with you.
So the kids, and to be honest, it was not actually a big hardship being in lockdown and having the kids. And again,
most people ate their faces off during lockdown.
I know, and so did I. So the first lockdown,
I know I did.
First lockdown was just, it was all about that. It wasn't until, I think, towards the end of the first lockdown when I was like, what am I doing? I have not dated in the last 5 years, right?
Okay.
And so like, having conversations with people while we were in lockdown last year, and you know, having this discussion about, you need to get out there, Naz, and people say this to me all the time, but I sort of, like, when you have lots of time, you start thinking about things, and I was like, oh my God, how am I going to show somebody this body? Like, I can barely stand to look at it myself.
But that's the problem, right? That's the problem. It's like what you just said. Like, you gotta love yourself first.
Yeah. But
Okay.
equally, you know, I love yourself, respect yourself, but don't be delusional. Like, you know.
I love it.
Like, I'm not gonna be delusional about what I look like. I know what I look like, and I know why I look like that.
So
right?
that was one of the big.
And then I think,
reasons.
okay, so I'm a moderately intelligent person. I know what I'm doing wrong.
Okay.
I know what I need to do differently.
Yeah.
Like, why the fuck am I not doing it? So I made a decision. And I'm quite strong in my resolve when I like try to do something. I'm like, I'm gonna gun for this. I'm getting this. I'm doing it. Whatever it takes. I get in my bubble. I'm doing this. And so started exercising. Started eating better. We got out of lockdown. Started training with you guys. Like, that was hard, man. Far out. Do you remember?
I do. I've never seen anyone fall off the rower before. I've never seen that happen before.
Far out.
Never seen that. But everyone starts at different levels. Everyone starts at different places.
That's right.
And even though some people fitter than other people, people have different capabilities. The thing that makes everyone kind of similar is the amount of effort that you put in.
That's right.
And that's the only thing that really matters.
What you put into it is what you get out of it.
But because of your starting point, though, like, your growth has been huge.
It has.
How much have you lost over this last year?
I've lost almost 25 kgs of weight, and I've gained almost 7 kg muscle.
Wow.
Actually, I've gained 7 kg muscle in the last 6 months. I don't actually know what I had gained up until that.
Yeah.
So it probably is more. But in the last 6 months, yeah.
It's amazing.
It is amazing.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And it's something I'm really proud of. Like, I'm...
Well, nobody else can do that for you.
No.
Yeah.
No. And you know, like, you and other people have said to me, oh, you should share your story on Instagram or on Facebook, put it up there because other people will get inspired by it. I know a lot of people, like, they do that because it keeps them going, it keeps them motivated, it keeps them accountable, right? I think I'm a very private person when it comes to things like that, and accountability for me is being accountable to myself. You know, I'm doing this for me. People who are my friends who are like you guys, you and Nora, like, have been like such big inspirations and motivation and like just sort of keeping me going, and you know, Nora and I talk every week, and when I wasn't working, we used to catch up every week, and we'd go for walks and you know, training with you guys. There was a time when I was so unfit, Michael. You know this. Like, I never thought about it. I was training with you guys, and you're an animal. You're a freaking.
I like to train.
You're a freaking animal, and I was like, right. So I can either be conscious of this, the fact that, like, I cannot even do a bear crawl. Like, I remember when you used to. Oh God. I am so unfit. I don't care. I need this. I need this support. I need these people. They're willing to help me. I'm going to go get this because otherwise I'm selling myself short. And I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go take this opportunity that's presented itself to me, and I'm going to use it, and I'm going to get myself there. I don't care what I look like. I don't care. Like, it doesn't matter. And so...
Nobody cares what you look like.
No, I care what I look like.
But that's also quite a important point to make, is that, like, I know that a lot of people that want to work out but don't work out, one of the biggest things that holds them back is worrying what they look like.
Yeah.
But the truth is that nobody really cares what you look like, because everyone's so busy worrying about what they look like themselves. And that's the reality of
also,
life.
If you're working hard enough at your workout, you don't have time to look at nobody else.
That's
like,
right. Yeah.
Like, you should not even be able to breathe.
That's right.
How are you looking at someone? This is how I feel.
How are you looking?
I'm like, if I don't have time to look at anybody else, they don't have time to look at me.
100%.
Even so,
That's exactly how it works.
My care factor was 0. What other people saw when they looked at me was, don't care. I'm here to get fit. I'm not here to make friends. I'm not here to look good. I'm going to look good at the end of this. But right now, it doesn't matter to me. I walk out of every single session. I am drenched from head to toe. But the feeling I have afterwards is like, I'm on top of the world.
After each session.
Yeah. I get up at 4 a.m. every day. 4 a.m. every single morning. I do a 5 a.m. gym class. Get home, get showered, get out the door. I have got a half-hour turnaround between getting home, getting out the door. But starting my day off that way as like fuel for my soul. It's like I've done something for myself today, and that thing made me feel so amazing. I take that into my day. That's the energy I take into my day every day. It's how I show up at work. It's my feel good factor every single day. One, that I have done something for myself, but two, it's literally the physical attributes. It's the endorphin release. It's the feeling, that you have through the day from having a good workout. And like I said to you when I saw you today, I was like, today's the first day in 25 days I haven't actually done a workout.
It's a lot of days to work out.
First day in 25 days, like because my gym's not open on a Sunday. Usually the Sunday's a walk, but it's like now I'm doing an 8K walk, and every single time I go for a walk, I challenge myself to do a better time than I've done the time before. So it's still like pushing myself to do, but I don't work out for as long every day as probably what you do,
Right.
But yeah, and I feel...
You must be sore a lot of the time.
Nah.
She's an athlete, everyone.
I am a pro now. But no, some days, and every week, almost every week, I increase the weights that I lift, because I'm like, I don't want to keep doing the same thing.
It gets too easier. It gets too easy.
I'm here to make a difference. I'm not just doing this to go through the motions and say ooh, I go to the gym in the morning. No. I want this to make a difference, so I'm going to push myself, and
We're
I do.
We're going to put you in a CrossFit team next week.
Dude, bring it. Bring it.
This is great. Which gym are you at working out at 5 o'clock in the morning?
So I go to F45 in East Tamaki.
East Tamaki?
Yeah. Awesome trainers. I've told them about you and how amazing you are, and how inspiring, and how you've got me on this fitness journey. Honestly, I don't think that I would have thought that I could do that if I had not trained with you guys.
Right.
I think that
you can do anything, Naz. You can do anything.
But it's quite intimidating being somebody of no fitness level, to do that kind of workout that you guys do. It's intense. It's amazing. But you need to understand, when you come from a point of no fitness, that is intimidating. That is how the hell do I do this? But you gave me a safe place to be able to to do that. It was with friends, and even knowing that you guys are so super fit, that was it was motivating for me. It's I want to be you. I want to be able to do that. Nora was always inspirational for me, even because we worked together, and I knew she was running. Do you know the first thing that I ever knew about you was that you were training for a 100K marathon? It was the first thing that I knew about you. And I was no. Well, I come from a place where there's a 100K marathon run every year. So it's not an entirely foreign concept to me, because the Comrades Marathon is one of the biggest marathons in the world. And so it's not an entirely foreign concept to me. It's oh, cool, your husband's a marathon runner. She's no. It's his first one, and he hates running. I was like, what? She's yeah, he's crazy. So we got to talking about, but anyway, so I realized from very early on, obviously, that, you were quite fit before I even met you. And then Nora was training to do marathons as well. And that was quite inspiring. And I was like, oh God, okay. So I knew coming into this that you guys were really fit, obviously way fitter than I was. But I had some level of comfort knowing that it was people that I knew. It was a safe environment. I didn't care about making a dick of myself. And I couldn't do anything. Even coming in there, I couldn't do anything, but I gave it my best shot. And I realized that that's all I had to do.
80% of it is just turning up.
Showing up.
Once you turn up, and then
that's right.
The rest is just what happens.
That's right.
But 80% is just turning up. And it's hard to turn up. I appreciate it. For a lot of people, it's hard just to turn up, because there's a lot of thoughts and stuff that can stop you or block you from turning up.
Yeah.
But when people just turn up, then the rest is sort of not out of their control, but they've opened themselves up.
You give yourself over.
Yeah.
You give yourself over to this experience,
to me,
to you. to you.
But I make sure that everyone's safe and
You do.
it's going to be okay.
You do. And that's actually quite a nurturing quality. It's like, you know, you actually taking care of these people for, you know, an hour or however long you guys train for. But that sort of gave me the confidence to go do that on a more regular basis, and to know that it was going to make a massive improvement. So during most of last year,
those first few sessions, like, how sore were you afterwards?
I was broken.
Yeah. For days?
For more than a week.
Oh, jeez.
I was absolutely broken. I could not walk up the stairs. I
Muscles
couldn't
that you
move
haven't
my
used
arms.
in years,
Nothing. I couldn't move my arms. I was absolute. Dude, you'd laugh. It was. My children used to laugh at me because I could barely walk.
Right.
I couldn't get in and out of my car.
Yeah.
I couldn't sit on the damn toilet.
Yeah.
It was bad.
Yeah.
It was bad.
But at the same time, you're kind of intrigued there. You're kind of curious. You're like, why is it so sore? Because obviously these are parts of my body I haven't felt like this in years.
And I wasn't doing weights. It was all body weight. I wasn't like stupid enough to think that I could lift weights. But at the same time, I thought I'd be okay because I was just using body weights. I was like, I've been walking. Surely that counts for something, but I was only using one muscle group.
Yeah.
You know? So, and even then I was training it differently to what you do in your classes. So, oh man, that was a bit of an awakening.
Yeah, I remember when I first started training like that, it was probably about back when I was probably 30.
Yeah.
And it was the same.
Yeah.
It really hurt, and I was really intrigued about why. I'd never heard of things like bear crawls. What are those?
Yeah.
And there were parts of like my size and stuff that just really hurt. I hadn't felt those parts in ages.
I mean, you didn't even know you had those muscles.
Yeah. Then it changed again, like when I decided to try and do that 100K run, that I felt parts of my legs that I didn't know existed.
Yeah.
And it was different. It was the same thing. I couldn't sit down. I could only limp around the house. I had toenails fall off. I had my feet, bottoms of my feet were falling apart because all the impact of like the non-stop hours of running. I'm not used to that.
It's not natural.
It's not natural, yeah. But people get accustomed to it though. But trying to break my body into that really fast, like really hurt. And I think anything that we do that we're not used to, it's gonna hurt.
Yeah.
But you can accustom your body to anything.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
The reason why I train so hard is like it's a mental thing for me. It's like a mental. I have to nearly kill myself.
And I know you've told me this before
I feel good.
Yeah.
But it's it settles me. It calms me. It puts me in a place where I'm easier to deal with.
Yeah.
I'm probably easier to deal with people once I've trained really hard, like in the morning, and I go through all my meetings and my work day, and I'm a reasonable person.
That's debatable.
But yeah, it's kind of like how you were talking before about, you know, like training in the morning, like you've done something for you for the day.
Yeah.
For me, it anchors me for the day, and then I'm fine.
Yeah.
And I know that I've accomplished something before I've even started my day. And I can go through everything. I can deal with it with anything.
Because I mean, I know this is true about you as well. Is that in my daily life, I give of myself from the time I walk out of my house in the mornings. Like that time in the morning before I leave home to go to work is the only time that's mine.
Right.
The rest of my time in the whole day belongs to other people. It's like you give. But I've started my day by giving to myself first. I've taken that time. I've done something for myself. I've fueled myself to be able to get through the rest of my day. And, you know, from 4 a.m. in the morning until I get home at about 6:30 in the evening, and I have to bring my best self to these 2 hours because that's the only time in the day that I'm mum to these children.
Yeah.
I can't give these kids some washed out version of myself because I've had a hard day at work. You know, I need to bring my A game. It doesn't matter what my day has been like. It doesn't matter how tired I am. This needs to be the time of the day when I've got my best self to give to them. And so you find reserves, you dig deep, and you do what you got to do.
So now, how often do they see their father?
They see him now every other weekend.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and you know, they love spending time with him. They love seeing him. I've been adamant since day one, and I've made a conscious decision to cultivate their relationship, regardless of his actions, regardless of his inadequacies. That I will never let my children feel any deficiency in terms of their dad, just because of a decision that I made for us not to live together anymore. So even when times were bad, it was, you know, I never talked him down. I never made him look small to them. I never made them ever think that he didn't love them.
It's very important, eh? Yeah.
Very important. But again, it's like, I want my children to be whole. I never want them to be scarred by this experience. You know, this is a positive thing that's happened in their lives. I need for them to see it this way when they're looking back at this in the years to come. And I never want them to feel less loved by their dad, or that he doesn't want to have a relationship with them, because things were not ideal in the first couple of years, and he was absent a lot. And so I needed to make that okay with the kids and still reassure them that, you know, he loves you. He's just not able to see you right now. And they were little, you know. It was really interesting because a couple of weeks ago, my 8-year-old asked me a question, and he says, why do you and Papa not live together? And I was quite taken aback, because I had thought that my kids had an understanding of what had happened. They were secure with the decision that we made. They were okay with it. This life that we have is really good. They know that they're loved by me, they're loved by their dad. We have a harmonious relationship. And so when he asked me the question, it took me aback a little bit. But I realized that he was 3 years old when it happened. And I'd had this discussion, and Zara and my daughter and my son, you know, they have a good understanding of why and what and how and all of that. They have because we had really long conversations, as many times as it took for me to get the message across, to make them feel okay. But my 3-year-old was absent from this, was not aware of what's going on. He just knows that this is the state of being, and he's just grown up in this. And I never thought to explain it to him. And he's never asked before, but he asked the other day. And so after I got over my initial, oh gosh, okay, you know, I thought you knew this, but obviously you don't. So I had a discussion with him, and at the end of it all, he was like, yeah, I understand why. But yeah, I don't remember how we started talking about this.
We went off a little tangent.
Another tangent.
What do you want for the future, Naz?
I want, like I said, you know, I feel like the biggest job in my life is being a mum. It's the most significant thing that I am. And for me, seeing my children grow to adulthood and being good people would be the accomplishment of my life. Not successful people, not accomplished, good people. It is the only requirement that I have when it comes to my children, is that you grow up to be a good person, an upstanding member of society who does good, who is kind, who is respectful. I don't care what you do for a career. What I want for the future is for them to have happy lives. And yeah, I don't know that I see the future in terms of accomplishments. I see the future in terms of feeling, in terms of, I want in the future to have the feeling of happiness, the feeling of fulfillment, the feeling of contentment, the feeling of peace, is more than, like, I don't think about material things so much. I don't think about what do I want to accomplish, what do I want in terms of a career. I want anything that will get me to these feelings, to this state of being. What will it take to get me there is what I see for the future. What that is, I don't know exactly, but hopefully I'll find it when I get to it.
I got one more question for you.
Yes.
You were quite adamant about having the New Zealand flag.
Yes.
Here in this podcast. I need you to talk to me about why that is. Like, why is it so strong for you?
Yeah. So, yeah, I'm South African born. Okay. But like I said, I'm a South African born Indian. So my culture is Indian. my culture is not South African, you know.
We could have put an Indian flag.
No.
Okay.
So the culture that I identify with is Indian, but I don't identify with an Indian flag because I've never been Indian. I've never belonged to India. I've got no culture from South Africa, you know, a little bit here and there. Lots of lessons in South Africa, obviously, you know, born there, raised there. I think when I moved to New Zealand, and I've lived my adult life in New Zealand, I found my identity in New Zealand. I have grown and become who I am in New Zealand. And to ask you a question, why do you have the Tongan flag up?
It's what I identify with.
Yeah.
It's what I identify with. It's where I grew up.
Yeah.
I'm quite embedded in... I'm obviously half Tongan, half Kiwi. However, I even feel like New Zealand sees me first as a Tongan before they see me as a Kiwi. Culturally, it's just so strong for me. It always has been quite strong for me. When I was in sixth form, I wrote a speech called "Proud to be Tongan." I went to the International Speech Festival.
Oh wow!
Took out third place. My speech was it's a solid speech.
Yeah.
But I broke it down into all different points of why I was proud to be Tongan. I got a tattoo on my back, which is the Tongan coat of arms.
Yeah.
It took me about 6 to 7 years just thinking about getting it before I decided I was going to get it. So something I really thought about.
Yeah.
So there are parts of my culture that I'm not so much proud about, but for everything that Tonga stands for, I am proud.
Yeah.
And it goes quite deep. So therefore, like, I'll always carry that quite close to me as being Tongan, and I identify quite strongly with it as well. I know the customs, I know the language, I know it so well.
Yeah.
New Zealand to me is my home.
Yeah.
New Zealand's my home now.
Yeah.
Okay, this is where I raise my children, and I appreciate all that. But Tonga will always be where I'm from.
Yeah.
And does that mean I'm a migrant?
You are a migrant.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, that's why.
You know, because when you asked me that question, it was actually, and you said to me, "Oh, if you could have one, which one would it be?" I didn't even have to think about it. I've thought about it since then, and I was like, "Oh, are people going to think that I'm weird that I chose the New Zealand flag and not the South African one?" But when I think about home, when I think about security, when I think about my safe haven, when I think about what flag would I want draped around me when I die. It's the New Zealand flag. I feel like this is where I was reborn. I hate that term, actually. I don't even know why I said that, to be honest, but it's the only word that I can think of right now to describe. And then, like I said to you, this has not been a journey to find myself, it's been a journey to create myself. And this is where that's happened, but I've only been allowed to do that because I've been here. If I did not live in New Zealand, this discussion would not be happening. This person would not exist. And this country has given me that, but they've given me an opportunity to give my children this life. And I feel a deep, deep sense of gratitude, but a deep sense of identification with being New Zealand as well. Like, it was not a cultural shock for me moving to New Zealand from South Africa. The lifestyle is so similar. Integration for me was really easy. I was so easily able to adapt to this life. I mean, you know, you see a lot more white people because, you know, you're not sort of segregated to your own communities anymore. Although, yeah, but it was easy for me to settle into life here, and I think I identify more as a Kiwi than I do as a South African. I don't understand what it means to be South African. What values did I get? How has that enriched the life that I lived when I was there? It was just the place that I was born in, and I grew up in, and I know lots of people would be at odds with what I'm saying right now, but it's how I feel.
It is what it is.
It is what it is.
I want to thank you for your time, for coming here to this humble little garage.
It's an amazing garage.
And for talking about your experiences and for being so open and prepared to like go deep with some of your stories as well. I know that this will reach out to a lot of people that are listening to it, and I hope it inspires some sort of light, some sort of hope to people that are either going through things that are harder than, or going through things that you were going through in the past. But for you and your children and your family, like, I wish you nothing but the best.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you. Cheers, Michael.
Thank you, Naz.
It's been good. Hasn't been as bad as I thought it would be.
We feeling nice, though, Mike. Gather round. It's in that mic on Mike.
Beautiful.
Are we done?
It's in that mic on Mike.
Oh my hat.
Yeah. Garage drinks with Mike. Woo.